Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is my returning guest, Justin Ford. And Justin is going to talk about the interview that I did with Tim Bagwell about the expansion of the House of Representatives. So, Justin, what's your take?
I think Tim was spot on with a lot of things. One of the things that I'd like to just underline that he said, and I think makes a lot of sense, and it's hard for us sometimes if you're not really into policy to sort of understand, but there are some things we want to do that will take a congressional amendment or will take a huge percentage of states agreeing. Uncapping the House is just a law. It's the same as any other law. It just takes a simple majority and a signature by the president. So boom, boom, you're done. So uncapping the House is one of the simplest things we can do to become a more democratic republic, right? It's one of the more simple things. And he mentioned it, but I mean, I think that's something to be underlined is, are there other things that are important? Yeah, there are other things that are important, but DC statehood is going to be a harder thing to get than uncapping the House, right? So I think that's one thing I'd really like to underline from his talk. I think that he did a fantastic job. There's a few things I'd like to point out that are sort of near and dear to my heart. One is gerrymandering gets harder if we split it up more, right? It just gets harder to come up with these weird districts if you just have more and more folks to do it. We also could do things like multi-candidate races, which they used to do. You know, you'd have a district with like you'd send two or three representatives. So it's just the number one, two, or three, which would help in some of these other parties that as they try to get off. If you've got a Green Party or a Libertarian Party or something like that, and you're trying to get it going, it's hard because we've got this first past the post system, right? If we changed it, we could do some things along that way. And then the other thing I'd say is um, I think we have lots of problems when it comes to the electoral college. But one of the ways we can sort of rectify some of those problems is by increasing the House number. We're going to increase the amount of electors everybody gets. So Wyoming and North Dakota won't have that much more of a voting power over California and New York and Texas, right? Because now it's just a math game. You know, they get one, but now California's going to get more, right? So that one that North Dakota gets is not going to be as a percentage of the electorals. The three they get from North Dakota won't be as much ahead of by population the bigger states. And I think that's important to note too. There's a lot of knock-on benefits that we would get from uncapping the House. Um, that I think, you know, I'd love to get into more, but like it's a bigger deal than a lot of people realize, and it's simpler to do than a lot of people realize, you know.
Okay, how many members would do you envision?
So there's a lot of different political science out there. One is that you go with the square root of the population. There's some weird models they also look at and look at other countries. I would like to see, personally, I think we would shoot for double what we have right now. So um, almost 900, 870 is what I would do right now. It'd be the simplest. Boom, done. Just double it. Originally, when the first the first Congress is weird because they didn't have a census, and so they don't have the numbers. Right? The numbers are wildly off. As you get into the 1800s, it was one representative per every 100,000 people.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the best number, but if you just use that as a gauge, right? You know, there's 750,000 people in a district. So you get seven times as many, seven and a half times as many, right? Which to me is a rather large house number. I think we would want to grow it slower. But the number that Tim gave was a lot smaller than the number I would give. I think it's still we have one of the least representative democracies out there because we've capped the House. And I think that his I would accept going to 500 if that's what was on offer, but I think his would be just a drop in the bucket and wouldn't solve some of the other problems that uncapping the House would solve, like the erosion of the legislative branch to the executive branch. You know,
Do you think it was intentional?
I my understanding when I first learned about this, which was many years ago, was that it was about office space Like it was about they didn't know where to put all the new members in Washington, D.C. Now, with things like Zoom and things like that, maybe it's not as important, but they were concerned about how big the building was. If you look at the House right now, it's pretty packed, right? So at doubling the amount of people, they wouldn't fit in that building. But if we can put in a ballroom, we can probably enlarge the House of Representatives. More importantly, I think that a lot of things in our history that we look at, not all, I mean, a lot of them have some very, very mean things that are about it, but a lot of it is just happenstance. Just was something we did. And then you get caught into these ruts, you know.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want to get too much into a story, but it's a good story. I use it in safety all the time because I'm a safety guy. Is that um, a person comes and a guy sits down and he's with his new wife and they made a ham and both ends of the ham were cut off and he'd never seen that before. So he asked his wife, "Well, why do you do that?" And she said, "I don't know. My mother always did it that way." So asked the mother, and she happened to be there too. It's like, "Hey, why do you do that?" She's like, "I don't know. My mother always used to do that." Now the grandmother happened to still be around and happened to be at the table, so he asked the grandmother, "So why do you cut the ends off of your ham?" She's like, "Well, when I was first married, I didn't have a pan big enough to
Oh,
put
wow.
in the ham. So she cut it off, right? But
Okay.
then it just got passed down, passed down, passed down. There was a good reason at the time. Now people have plenty of big pans. There was a good reason at the time, I think, to cap the house because they had a problem they didn't know what to deal with. And then they just kept kicking the can down the road. And our population has grown astronomically to the point where it's becoming a problem, you know? But they didn't notice that at the beginning. It just kind of everybody did it because that's the way it's always been done, you know? And lots of times, you know, when we have a system that starts to go wrong, and I think we can say that for many people in the United States, the system is starting to go wrong. Let's take a look at the system. Let's not go with this is how it's always been done. That's not a good answer anymore, you know?
But if you want to change government, that's gonna be chaos, I think.
That's why I want to just double it. I don't want to get up to like 6 or 7 times. I think that would be too much. But doubling it, you could do something as simple as electing 2 people in each one of these House districts, right?
Oh,
Like
wow.
you could do something like that. So you take your top 2 voters, right? And then don't do first past the post, do like ranked choice voting and just do that if you wanted to. I'm not saying I would leave it to the states how they wanted to deal with their apportionment. That's how the Constitution is set up, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so that would be a bigger. If you wanted to change the way it was done that way, you'd that would take a constitutional amendment. So you would leave it to the states. You would just give each state twice as many as they have now. You know, well, some states would probably still just get one, but they would get twice as many. You would need to figure out where they're going to sit. That's a logistics problem. That's easy enough to solve, right? We can rotate people. There's a lot of people that don't think you should have to show up to the House in order to vote, you know, or the Senate, right? People that with kids and stuff like that. If we want younger people to be in Congress, we need to start working around them. Everybody else has to work around people's abilities. If we want people with limited with different abilities to come in, which I think is important, they should represent our community. We can let them virtually vote.
But why not build a bigger building?
You could big building or rent a bigger building while you're waiting to build a bigger building. And yeah, that's all just logistics. I
Okay.
mean, if that becomes the problem, that's a small problem. What it would allow us to do though is we could demand more out of our House of Representatives members to write more of the legislation, which is good rather than allowing the executive unelected bureaucrats write the legislation. Not that they do a bad job writing the legislation, but it's nice to have somebody who has to answer for what they do.
Mhm.
My favorite example, again, I'm a safety guy. The OSHA Act that was passed in 1970 hasn't had any of their chemical standards um, revised, even as we get more and more data. It is known in my field that OSHA standards aren't protective. We know that to the point that the industry started to sue the ACGIH, which is a group of industrial hygienists that came up with protective standards because OSHA started to use it, right? And like, wait, you need to follow. Congress needs to pass these. Who in Congress has time to go through a bunch of chemical stuff to figure out what the appropriate standards are for our workplace, right? So they don't read the bills. They can't craft the bills. They're using lobbyists and other people because there's not enough of them. We could have a small working group to work on those sorts of things if we had enough people to work on it. And if we want people to represent us and we want them to represent us well, we need to make the task something that's capable of the representatives to do. and then we can demand them to do it. And I think that's what I would like. That's my pie in the sky idea of lifting the House of Representatives, is that we'd have more representatives taking part in making policy.
So you think that the House is very important because it's the nearest federal office next to the people, right?
Right. And they get elected all the time. I'm not for term limits. I'm not for lengthening the amount of terms. I think every 2 years is fine. But it would be better if you actually knew your representative. Wouldn't that be nice? Like, people tend to know their city council member, or they kind of know him. They know somebody who knows somebody. You can get a hold of him. I can go and meet my alderwoman right now if I wanted to. Go walk down, go knock on her door. She'd sit there and meet me. When you have 750,000 people in your district, it's hard for you to do that. That's the other thing that I was talking to this. I think she was about 4 or 5 on the street, and her dad was there and says, like, well, what does a House of Representative member do? Because I asked if they had any questions, and she's like, honey, do you have any? And her dad was like talking about legislation. I said, that's important, but also as constituent service. Like, if you have a problem with the federal government, you can go to your representative and they can help to represent you in dealing with Social Security, or getting your passport quicker. Well, if there's one per 750,000 people, it gets a little harder to do that, doesn't it? When you live in smaller states, sometimes the senator is easier to get a hold of than the House member, right? Because there's two of those. So, like, um, we we're a growing country. That's a great thing, and our representatives need to grow with them in order to meet the needs of the country. And we knew that. We just stopped it.
But every elected official has district offices,
They do. They do.
right?
Um, it's difficult to get to them if you live out in Wakanda and you're coming into Evanston to go to Jan Schakowsky's district office. It's a long drive. And the people know Jan Schakowsky is our current representative. She's a great representative. People in Evanston know her. They're like, I see her at the grocery store. But the people in Uptown don't, because they don't go to the same grocery store, right? So,
Right?
like you're right. They do have district offices for people who are sophisticated. They can make it work for them. However, if you had more people, they would be able to provide better service, right? Because it's anything else. Like, if you have, it's like if you have 2 cashiers at the grocery store and it's getting really busy, having 4 makes light work for all of them, right? And they can get everybody through.
Okay, so there's every district, there's events in that district, whether it's a county fair or a
Yep,
beauty pageant or whatever. And an elected official more more times would go to something like that if that they're not voting in the House. So there's an opportunity for the electorate to meet their representative at different events, right?
agreed, agreed. I mean, we have a representative democracy, and you can meet them. Like, it's possible, especially during election years. You can meet them; they will be out there. Um, I think JB Pritzker was showing videos of him walking, running on Lakeshore Trail this morning, right? Like, he's out and about and doing stuff. You can meet these people. We are not people, but if we had more, it would be easier. You'd be more likely to see them at the events you go to. So, for instance, last weekend, I was getting signatures because it's signature period, and there was a festival in Uptown, a music festival, which is where I attended. At the same time, there was a solar festival looking at solar power on the beach, which would have been nice to attend too. But I can only be in one spot, right? If
Right.
I'm doing stuff, I can only be one place. And if you got to go back and forth to Washington, if you have work to do, you're not always in your district. And so when you are in your district, if it's that big, you know, because we could do that, we could go the other way, just for the sake of the thought process. What if we went to 1.5 million people rather than 750,000? Well, it'd be even that much harder to go meet everybody. It'd be even harder to get into that office, right? To get your needs met. So if we go the other way, it would be easier. I'm not saying that that's the only reason to do it, but there are a lot of benefits to uncapping the House, and that's one of them is you'll get better constituent service because
Okay.
there'll be more
So
people to do it.
if you add more representatives, there's going to be that much more money in politics, right?
Well, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because there's only so much money in politics. It's got to go to somebody. If we get to a point, as a citizen candidate, I have almost no money, right? Which means as we get close to the election, the people with money are going to overwhelm the airwaves and try to win this election near the end by just boom. And if you want somebody who is at a huge fundraising disadvantage, you'll notice this. You know this is coming. You know, I know this is coming. I would love to get in front of as many people as I could beforehand so they can make up their mind about me before that happens. Well, I can only get, if there's 750, it's harder for me to get there. If you want citizen candidates, when we started talking about like what's the optimum number, and I said, you know, I think square root of the population's reasonable. There's some other models, but if we went up towards the 3,000, 4,000 mark rather than the 900 mark, that's a big number, 3,000. The districts get to a point where they actually know you. They know you, right? They can pay attention to you. They know who you are. And so it gets harder to buy those people. Not saying it's impossible, but if you go to a small town, which I grew up in a small town, there's not a lot of money in those politics. There's no point. The people know who they are. You know what I mean? Like they'll get to you get to know who they are. So like it's not like you have to like get Facebook ads in front of them. They will know you. And so if they know you, they're like, "Oh, well I trust Justin," because I've worked with him. I know my cousin worked with him. We know who he is, right? Um so I think the idea that it would lead to more money in politics misses the point. Let's pretend we make only one representative. Here's a question. The Senate has plenty of money in politics.
Mhm.
There's only 100 of them.
Right,
They have more money. It takes more money to be a senator than it does to be a member of the House.
right.
Yeah. So if we increase the number, it's just going to make it so it takes less money to run. People get to know you more. You'll be in smaller markets. You'll have a smaller share you have to do. That's fewer signs you have to put up. That's fewer things you have to do in order to get your name out there and your ideas out there. That's the other benefit of uncapping the House is we can get so many more people access to this. Right now in my race, it's a very select group of people that can run for the House of Representatives. It just is. A couple of people announced and aren't doing anything, and one person announced and got out really quickly. I think they found out that it's really hard, to do this. And the ones that are doing really well, that's their full-time job. Well, that's a lot to ask out of somebody to run for the House of Representatives. Quit your
Yeah.
job, which if you lose this, God knows what's going to happen. And we're not in a great job market right now, right? Um, yeah, this is like that's a lot. So then we're only getting that group of people, the people that can quit their job or maybe got to an early retirement age and think this is a good idea to do in retirement. We're going to only get in this group of people that can really dedicate their time and effort towards it. And then we're also getting the political class, which is fine. We're going to always have the political class. But I think that if by increasing the cap, we would just allow so many more people, so much more opportunities to come in. I would like to see the cap raised quite a bit more than double, but you've got to win. There's partly a negotiation, and I can understand that people are like, well, 4 times just seems too much. Okay, fine, we'll do double first, and then see where we get to from there.
Okay, so if it doesn't take an amendment to the Constitution, refresh my memory, how would this be done?
So let's pretend I got elected to the House, and I propose a bill that says we're going to apportion it this way. This is how much it is, and it gets passed. Goes through committee and passes. It's kind of like the Schoolhouse Rock, showing my age a little bit. The Schoolhouse Rock, how bills get passed. So we get a bill, and then it would go to the Senate where they'd go through committee. They would harken it all out. My eventually there'd be things back and forth, and my double might end up being 800 or might end up being 1,200, right? Because you need to give 2 to Alaska for some reason, whatever. So they'd be arguing back and forth. Once those get passed and goes to the committees and pass the House, then it goes to the Reconciliation Committee. They decide, goes back, they vote, goes to the president. If it's vetoed, you have to override the veto. If it's not vetoed and signed, it goes into law. at whatever skip. You might say at the next election, right? So let's say now, let's say we got it in the first 6 months, which would be hilariously fast. But let's just say then it would be for the 2028 election, right? Because it gives people some time. But if you got it near the 2027, you might be like, okay, we're going to do 2030 election, you know?
Okay. So as you campaign, have you brought this issue up?
Some. It's not my main focus. If people start talking about elections, I will bring it up as one of my members. I had a person call me up to ask about term limits,
Hmm.
and it's like it was a special interest group or whatever. And I got into this with them a lot because I'm like, I don't think term limits are going to solve anything because all it's going to do is lead to more money in politics. Term limits will lead to more money in politics because um, you'll just buy these people over and over again, right? It's hard to win that first election. It gets easier to win re-election, and we'll lose all that institutional knowledge. But when I was talking to them, and I was explaining this to the lady on the phone. She's like, I've never heard that before. And I was giving her links and stuff. It's like, so if it comes up, if I'm getting signatures or something like that, but this is not part of my stump speech, this isn't part of what I'm pushing. Um, I'm pushing some pretty progressive ideas and some pretty new ideas that I think are going to be more impactful to people's lives. This is something that I am interested in and does show up in some of my literature, but you have to sort of dig to find it. This isn't a big one. This is more for policy walks to start talking about, like, isn't this a neat idea? What would it look like? How would it work? Right? Um, Most people care about how they're going to afford a house,
Hmm.
childcare. That's what they care about. Those are what a lot of the policies I'm focusing on are about.
Okay, so you're very busy running your campaign, and you've come up with this novel idea. And people who are listening to this might like that idea. What's the best way to, I don't want to overburden you with your
Questions?
inquiries, but what would you say would be the next step?
Well, I mean, if what you are interested in is uncapping the house, if you Google uncap the house, you're going to find all these groups that this is what they focus on. There is a ton of like nonprofits and action committees and things that really care about this. It's not like I'm the poster child for this idea. This has been understood in political science for a while.
Hmm.
We know that this is a problem in the United States, and there are people that are trying to rectify this problem. If what you're interested in is, oh, look, Justin's talking about this, and I like Justin, you can go to my website at votejustinford.com, read my policies that you're interested in, and then you can email me if you have questions or thoughts or concerns or whatever. I'm happy to answer those. But if this is something that's near and dear to your heart, then go to where you said you're going to these fairs and wherever where people are running for Congress right now and ask them this. Hey, do you support uncapping the House?
Hmm.
Right? Now, if they're a good representative and they don't know what you're talking about, they'll say, I haven't looked at it. I have no idea. Right? But if we start asking it more and more of our representatives, it'll come up. If it becomes something we demand, people will do it. It's so I'm fighting for a 4-day work week, right? That's what I'm trying to push as my main thing. And a lot of people say, same as uncap the House, how the heck can it happen? If we start electing people on this promise, it'll happen. That's the benefit of representative democracy, right? Most people in Congress only care about winning reelection. If this is a way for them to get reelection, they'll do it. Now, the big problem you're doing for especially the House members is you're going to weaken them, right? Each individual House member will have less power. They'll become more representative. They'll be less powerful. What?
You'll weaken them with more people in
Yeah,
Congress.
yeah. Each individual congressman will have less power because now instead of one out of every 400, you need one for, there's 435 votes you need to get a majority of. Now it's going to be 900 votes you need to get a majority out of. So each individual vote won't matter as much. It's the same thing like a senator is more powerful than a US House member in voting power, right? Just because there's only 100 of them. Um, and we sort of see them different in society. So I think this would be a good way also of sort of taking the political class and getting them a little closer to people by weakening them a little bit. Not the house will become stronger, but the individuals of the house will become weaker.
So If anybody is interested in working on your campaign,
Yep.
contact you, giving you a donation or a volunteer, how could they do so?
So if you go to my website, votejustinford.com, you'll see up there, there's a few different links. One you can donate, one you can volunteer, another one you can share your story, right? Because one of the things I want to do is be able to hear people. So if you just like, hey, I don't want to volunteer, but I want you to know what I think, that's a great place to put where you want me to know what you think. If you'd like to volunteer, or even if like you decide to volunteer and then you start talking to me and like, no, you don't want to, that's fine. Go into that one. We can at least have a conversation. I'll call up and see how you'd best fit into the campaign. Donations are always welcome. I understand it's tight for everybody, so I'll let you know that I am running one of the more efficient campaigns you can imagine in a very crowded field. And so any dollar you send me will be well used, right? Most of the money for this campaign has come from my own pockets and my own savings. So, it's one of those things that I will really appreciate if anybody donates.
And how's the campaign going?
I think it's going well. We are seeing, more people interested. I think that kind of like what I said, I think we're going to see how many people end up on the ballot. So that comes into in Illinois, the end of October, we'll go and put in our petition ballots, and then there'll be a like where they can test it and things like that. So if right now there's 18, if they all make it on the ballot, it'll be the largest primary ballot for a House representative in Illinois history. The last time this happened, the winning vote got 22%, something like that, which makes it easier for a lesser known candidate. If I can get people that are interested in what I'm saying, makes it better for me. So this would be much harder if it was just me up against some establishment candidate, right? It would just be much, much harder. So in that sense, it's going well. In the signature, we're right on target. It's going a little bit better than I thought it was going to. It's been a little bit easier to get signatures than I thought it would be. Um, I still need to put a lot of time and effort into it. And then I'm focusing a lot on unions. A lot of those people are waiting to see who gets on the ballot. They're not going to get too involved until then, but they're calling and they're more interested than when I first started. So it's picking up. For people that were running, and we started running in last spring, and you're looking at a lot of people look at it's next fall is the general election, but realistically for a gerrymandered district, it'll be the primary, which is ours is in March, right? So the election will be over in March, and so I think people are starting to ramp up, getting ready for that election. This seat has not been open for a long time, and so people are like brushing off their questionnaires and doing those sorts of things. As that happens, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. You obviously are interested in the uncapping the House. I have a climate change plan that I think actually makes sense and can actually do something, not just talking points. I pushing the 4-day work week. Some people are really excited about that. Just having a union candidate is exciting for some people, right? Just let's look at this. And we're really running an issue oriented campaign. You don't hear me attack the other side very much. I think what we need to do is push forward. And so that seems to be working well.
Great, great. So you've been listening to Justin Ford running for Congress in the 9th district, right,
Yep, ninth
of
district.
Illinois. Have you spoken to Chakowski at all?
No, I have not. I think she's got some other people, and obviously she's busy. Um, I would like to, if she comes to events, but she's still our House member and she's working hard on that. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the House. We've got this continuation bill, right? Budget bill that's coming through, and so she's working hard. She is not endorsed in the race. No conversations, So I think she probably has talked to some of the people that are more politically that she knew before they started running. But I think she's trying to take a wait and see, or maybe let the ninth decide for themselves. I don't know. One of those two. That's probably what she's trying to do.
So you've been listening to Justin Ford. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget that on August 1st, it's National Candidate Recognition Day. Uh, we're going to celebrate our 250th birthday on July 4th. Please honor those candidates who have worked hard to keep this democracy alive to get to our 250th birthday. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day. Thanks, Jason.